Done. Welcome, everybody. This is the KubeVirt community meeting, June 26, 2019. First up on the agenda, let's talk about the KubeVirt V1 GA release. We had discussed this last week, but there was some follow-on discussion on the mailing list, so I thought I'd turn it over to David.
Hey, yeah, that was a good discussion. So right now we're still looking at making our... You can't hear me? You can't hear me?
You.
Nobody hears me?
I can hear you.
Yeah,
I can hear.
Okay. All right, I'll start over. So we had a good discussion on the mailing list. It may still be going on. I'm not sure. What we're looking for in that discussion is blockers, things that prevent us from being able to maintain our API going forward as GA. Something that would cause a backwards incompatible change for us to be able to support it moving forward. So the kinds of changes we can do moving forward is we can add things to our API, and that's really about it. So we can add things and say that we deprecate previous workflows but still maintain them. So if there's anything that you guys perceive as being something that just isn't going to work moving forward, that will require us to either remove a field or modify the name of a field, we need to be aware of that and reconsider whether or not we GA. But at the moment, it looks like we're moving forward with it. And if we don't hear any feedback soon, contrary, then it'll probably get GA'd towards the end of the week.
Thank you, David. And if there's no questions on that or further discussion, let's move on to discussing about the pod disruption budget and expectations with respect to migrations. And I'll turn it over to Roman.
Hi. I just want to recall what this even was about, since I'm not...
Sorry about that. So the context here is the...
yeah. So if you recreated a virtual machine instance with the same name, it could happen that it didn't get a pod disruption budget, and when you were doing a migration, the pod was not protected, and the VM could have been stopped. That's basically all of it, and it's fixed now.
And that change prompted 0.17.4 earlier in the week. And so look forward to that in the next release, which will happen next week, I assume. Moving on, let's talk about live migration with respect to masquerading or Slurp, and I'll turn it over to Vladik.
Yeah, so what this change is going to do, it will prevent virtual machines from this change will prevent live migration for virtual machines with a bridge interface. That's simply because after live migration, virtual machines will lose connectivity until they will refresh and get a new IP, and even then there will be issues. In order to prevent losing connectivity, we just want to switch by default for using the masquerade interface, and this basically will be able to be configurable, which interface is the default in the kubeconfig, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So this also will enable allow users to use the Slurp interface, and they can also disable it in the KubeVirt config as well.
All right, if there's no questions on that, next topic will be Mac support for SIRV from EHAR.
Yeah, just a heads up, I'm working on adding custom MAC address support for SRV interfaces. And my initial thought was that we can utilize what is called host dev interfaces in LibVirt to do at least part of this job, because right now we're using what is called host dev devices, which means that LibVirt doesn't even know that it's a networking device, so it doesn't know about MAC addresses either. But LibVirt has some assumptions made about what's available to it. And since we're running in an isolated container with limited access to, let's say, PF netlink, it's not working. So an alternative solution that we're currently approaching is to just do all the configuration and CNI plugin. And there's PR for that. It's a bit involving, but reviews welcome if you're interested in this kind of thing. And hopefully it will not require any changes on KubeVirt side, since we have generic micronotation support there. So that's for this topic.
Any questions on that? All right, next up, looking to move to libvirt version 5.4, and I'll turn it over to Sebastian.
Sorry, there's another one from me. I was just.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, I missed it.
Yeah, about their RNG. So I was experiencing some very weird issues here with one of my setups, where console, when I was booting Fedora images specifically, console was not working. Like, it was showing some boot messages and then was stuck. It took me a while to realize what's going on until Sebastian was helping me with debugging it, and he connected to VNC for the same machine, and then console unblocked. So it turns out that when he moved mouse there, he generated some entropy, and apparently the boot process was blocked because no RNG available, and it was waiting for some source of entropy, either key presses or mouse or whatever, and was never going anywhere. So once he moved mouse, like the system continued to boot. It was very weird, but and it seems like it's happening on fresh kernels. I have like a bunch of. I have more details if you're interested. You can find them in the issue. But I found a bunch of bug reports and discussions and mailing lists around that there was a change later in latest kernel versions that made it worse. So I've posted a bunch of PRs just to add the RNG device for Fedora examples. I have a documentation update for user guide mentioning that, but also documenting RNG in general because it was not documented. But there's a legit, there are some legit comments, questions in the PRs, like why wouldn't we just add RNG by default to all VMIs? And I don't know the answer to that, but maybe we should. So I can follow up and just push a patch that would just do that. Always add RNG, whether it's specified or not. But are there any objections, or someone is aware of some reason not to do that?
So when you say moving or attaching the RNG, this is a hardware RNG device separate from dev random or dev urandom?
What it means is that if you load virt.io RNG kernel module inside your guest, then it gets access to, I don't know how it looks like, but for the guest, but I imagine it looks like a hardware RNG, but it gets the input from the host itself.
Yeah,
it
and
hopefully has RNG.
And on the host, you can, as far as I remember, on the host you can configure where it takes its entropy from. You can use dev random, dev urandom, and others, I think.
That I don't know. I'm not aware of that, but so again, like I don't know whether there's any reason not to add it. I've seen I think Fabian mentioned that on Twitter.com that we were not adding. We were trying in the past to not add any devices that we are not exactly sure that are needed for everyone, perhaps to speed up things and whatnot. But I'm not sure whether we would speed up anything without, like, by not adding the RNG. It seems like something that wouldn't take probably a lot to detect and move on with the boot process. But maybe I'm wrong.
So as far as the question, I think we skipped over it, in terms of whether or not we want to add this by default. Is this something we want to follow up on the mailing list with?
I think the only reason why we didn't add the VirtIO is because it's not supported by all. It's not supported by default by all guests, but I think this is the only reason.
Yeah, I also think, I think that's still the concern I would have today. The question to me is, what devices do we want to add by default if we know ahead of time that they are not recognized by all guests? That's true, for example, for the ballooning device, for the virtual RNG device, and for example, for VirtIO serial console. We could add them, and the two things there are to it are that they would be existing in every guest, and we don't know what they do with them. And they, to me, they open up as an attack surface, right? Because we offer them even if they are not needed. That's actually what we said, that we have the templates, because with the templates, we know what guest we are deploying, and thus we know what devices are supported, and thus we can add the relevant ones. But that's always going to be then a problem if you're not using the templates.
Yes.
Yeah, a while back, we had the same issue with live migration that we had to, actually we have it on the mailing list as well. The decision was to just add the RNG device to all the tests that uses Fedora for live migration, but
Okay, so the upshot I heard is that we should probably use templates if required to address what default hardware devices there should be.
To be honest, I don't know. I really don't know. Actually, I suggested to ER that we rediscuss it. I wonder actually what KubeVirt and what OpenStack does. And maybe we can take it to the mailing list because they have experience with it and they have judged it for themselves already. You know, do we add VirtIO devices by default even if we don't know if the guest is supporting them or not? So I think it might be worth to look at them and see what they do and then align to it, which could mean we don't add them by default, or it could mean we add them by default.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good idea to check what their thinking was, whatever the decision they made, if they even considered it. Because I'm still not exactly sure in which particular setup environment, in which particular environment I can reproduce that. Because in the past we were hitting it on one host but not another one. And now I also got a new host and I'm hitting it here, but I suspect if I would move somewhere else, maybe I wouldn't. I suspect it's a match of what the kernel is running on the host, what's in the image, and maybe something else about the hardware itself that I'm not exactly aware of. Just was very confusing when you hit it. I think that maybe we may want to take an extra step and prevent this happening for anyone, even if maybe sometimes we expose too much. But so okay, so it's on me to follow up and check what others are doing and see whether they have good reasons.
Well, you raised a good point that if this is a recent kernel change, this is going to affect more and more distros as they start pulling in the 5 series kernels.
Yeah, it's I've seen the first report somewhere around the middle of the previous year, so it's not like a completely fresh, but fresh enough. And I also suspect that, you know, even if like one of the weird things about the issue that I hit was Fedora was affected, but not Cirrus or Alpine. So because they were starting different services that didn't require access to random data, and Fedora is doing a lot more stuff. Like I think it's generating SSHPs, and maybe that's what was blocking it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I think like it's incorrect to suggest that Cirrus and Alpine are not affected, because they are still affected. It's just that their boot process is not locked by the issue. But if you run something inside the VMs that will need access to entropy, then it will probably fail in a similar way, like being stuck or something.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Ihar, because you're right. They are not, yeah, it's the wrong impression that they're not affected because they just don't ensure that there's enough entropy. Yeah.
Okay, I will check and report back. Maybe we can discuss next week or something. No rush.
All right, so next topic, returning to the libvirt version 5.4. And it looks like Sebastian's not here, so I'll ask Archon to speak on it.
Yep, so Sebastian needed to add a new package under the libvirt image, and like always, virt preview repository just removed the older versions of the libvirt, and currently the version that we have under the virt preview repository is 5.4. So Sebastian just jumped his version to 5.4. And I just wanted to announce it and to ask if it's fine for everyone that we will advance our upstream version of the libvirt.
Well, my take is that we're early enough in release cycle for next versions that we should have time to adapt if there's a problem.
I would just throw in for now that maybe we cannot do this change for not in June, but rather plan it for July, just to not risk the upcoming release.
But to be honest, currently Sebastian a little bit blocked because he cannot bring the new package that will make possible to support KubeVirt on top of OKD 4.1.2 cluster because just Red Hat CoreOS operating system does not have IP tables model under it, and the only option is to use NF tables. So it's pretty blocker currently. We can work around it, like with different hacks, like use the libvirt, the old libvirt image, and create the new image that will take from this image and just install the new package. But again, it's just workarounds.
Understood.
Okay, with that, then I guess the next thing is to talk about the REST API test coverage, and I'll turn it over to Marcin. I apologize, he is not here. Maybe he is. Marcin? All right, we can circle back to that. He seems to be having a microphone problem. So we'll jump ahead to the open floor and talk about the KubeCon North America CFP. And I believe Fabian may have that. No, Pep added this.
I did, yeah. And basically it says it all. So KubeCon NA is closing the call for papers in about a couple of weeks from now. So this is a call for, one of the criteria they have when accepting proposals is, it's easier if they are co-presented by teams across different organizations. So I would encourage people to see, first, obviously, find an interesting topic. And obviously, KubeVirt is a very interesting topic, but there are many ideas here. But the other thing would be another goal would be if we can manage to organize something across teams that would give us a better chance of acceptance. That's what I wanted to add.
Okay, so get those proposals in. Is there anything else we need to discuss on the open floor? All right, since we are probably still having mic problems with Marcin, I guess we have to nix that topic for now. Please feel free to add notes to the document directly, Marcin, And with that, thanks everybody, and see you next week.
You guys. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Have a nice week.